Welcome back to the Fuji Guy's channel. My name is Francis. So you've just got yourself a brand new FUJIFILM X-H2S and you'd like to know a little bit more about the features. Well, keep on watching. So the FUJIFILM X-H2S features 7 custom positions that can be found on the top dial, the mode dial of the camera, and then we can choose between C1 to C7 and then have them do various things, whether it's photo or video settings. So how do we go about setting them up? So we just go into the menu and then go to the image quality setting to the third page, and then we have custom mode setting, and then we can go and choose whether it's a photo or a video custom setting. So we just go around and then select whether it's still or movie. Now if we go back, we could go to edit and save custom setting, and then we can go between each one and then dial in our settings and also give it a custom name. So let's say this one, I'm gonna be setting it to birds. And then I can go and edit the settings. So that's going to be shot in shutter priority with a shutter speed of 1/250th of a second. And then I'm going to go into my AF/MF settings and then have my subject detection set to birds. So I can keep going and then dial in all of my settings. But there's another way that I found to be a little bit more practical and quick. So the way I do it is go into the image quality setting and then go to auto update custom setting, set it to enable, and then go to the various C1 to C7 position and then dial in all of my settings. So C1, I'm gonna set my autofocus, my film simulation and all that. I'm gonna go to C2, do the same thing up to C7 or less if you don't want the 7 positions. But then once I'm done dialing in all of my settings, I'm gonna go back into the menu and then disable the auto update custom settings. So now all of my custom settings are set and then I'm good to go. Now with the FUJIFILM X-H2S, it is possible to track various subjects like animals, birds, automobiles, bikes, and so on. So how do we go about setting that up? So we simply go into the menu and then we go to our AF/MF setting, and then we go down to the second page to subject detection setting. And then we can go and choose whether we want to track animals, birds, automobiles, motorcycles or bike, airplanes, or train. So for now, we're gonna set it to bird. And then here we go. Now we're ready to track some birds. So let's talk about the AF modes on this camera. So we have single, zone, and wide, and then also we have an option to be all, so we can go through all of them with the rear command dial. So how do we go to change the AF modes? We simply go into the menu and then we go to AF/MF setting and then we'll go to AF mode. So if I set it to single point and then I move my joystick around, I can simply go and rotate the rear command dial to change the frame size. Now let's go to zone. So now if we have AFC set, then our subject tracking will be through this zone here. And then again, if I move the joystick, it will be lit in green, and then I can rotate the rear command dial to change the size of my zone box. And then we have wide tracking. So with wide tracking in AFC, we will have a box here, and then that will be used to select our subject we want to track. So I'll use that box and then point it at my subject and then half press, and then it'll start tracking my subject all the way across the frame. Now if we go back and then we select all, That will allow us to go through all three modes basically. So I simply move my joystick, I have my box lit in green, and then I can just rotate the rear command dial, and then I'll go from single point to zone, keep going to wide tracking, and then if I keep going, I go back to single point. So with the Fujifilm X-H2S, it is possible to shoot up to 15 frames per second in mechanical shutter as well as 40 frames per second blackout free with the electronic shutter. Now, how do we access these various drive modes? We simply go into the back on the camera and then press onto the drive button, and then we can go and choose between high-speed burst, and then we have a high speed with a crop, and then a lower speed burst. Now, as you can see, we have the high speed with crop that's grayed out, and then the 20, 30, and 40 frames per second are grayed out. That's because we're in mechanical shutter, so we need to go in and set the camera to shoot electronic so that we can go and access these modes. So let's go into the menu and then go to our shooting setting onto the second page, and then shutter type, we need to set it to electronic shutter. And now if we press on our drive button again, we can see we have access to the full 40 frames per second as well as the high speed with a 1.2 times crop. Now let's set it to 40 frames per second. And then if I go and shoot, I'm shooting now, but you can't hear anything. So if we do want to hear something, we can go into the menu, down to the wrench icon, and then to sound setup, and then electronic shutter volume. We can bring it up a little bit, or we can make it very loud. We can also choose the electronic shutter sound. So now that it's set, if I'm shooting, I can hear that I'm shooting. So that's how I go about setting my drive option. So Fujifilm cameras have a lot of bracketing options, and the X-H2S is no exception. We can choose between various bracketing options like ISO, auto exposure, film simulation, dynamic range bracketing, and then focus bracketing. So how do we go about setting these bracketing options? So we simply go and press onto the drive button, and then if we go down, we can see we have our ISO bracketing option, our white balance, and if we go down one more time, we have our various bracketings like auto exposure, film simulation, dynamic range, and focus bracketing. Now for all of these bracketings, we have the possibility to go on and change the settings of how the bracketing is going to behave. So for example, if I go to the film simulation bracketing, I can simply press on the Q button, and that will bring me to my bracketing options. So I can choose which film simulations I want to shoot. So I can choose up to 3. So I can go on and change the various film simulations. Now we can use the auto exposure bracketing if we wanted to create HDR photos. And then we could use the focus bracketing if we wanted to do focus stacking. Now, one thing to note is that the camera won't actually process the images into the camera. You'll need a separate software. So the camera will shoot, for example, your bracketing, so focus bracketing all the images, but you will need a separate piece of software to put it together. Same thing with HDR. So you'll need your 3 or 5 images. You'll have them on your memory card, but you'll need a separate software to blend them together. So like all Fujifilm cameras, the X-H2S is highly customizable, so you can change the function settings of the various buttons across the camera. So to do that, we simply have to long press the display back button, and then we'll have a diagram that pops up with highlighted in green the various buttons. So we can go and choose a button, and then we can go in and choose between 10 pages of different functions. So this is really flexible, and this is a way to make the camera tailored just for you with all the right settings that you need. So the Fujifilm X-H2S is a highly capable video camera, and then we have a lot of settings that we can dial in, and then we'll go through the movie setting list we'll just have a little overview of that. So the way we access that is simply we go to the movie position first on the mode dial, click on the menu, and then we have movie setting list. Now you'll see this panel is separated between your memory cards and HDMI. So we basically have somewhat of a duplicate on each side. Now our HDMI is not connected, so it is grayed out, but it is basically the same thing. Now we can see we have a lot of information grouped together. So firstly, we have the resolution and frame rate. So that's where we choose whether we want to shoot in full HD, in 4K, or in 6.2K. We can also choose our frame rate here. So we can set it to 23.98. And then secondly is the media recording setting. So that's where you select how you want your videos to be recorded. So by clicking on it, we can choose whether we want it on the first memory card, the second one, if we want it to be recorded to HDMI, if we want it to be recorded as a backup. So it is recorded to the first memory card as well as the second one as a duplicate, or if we want it to be set to sequential. So the first card fills up and then it overflows onto the second card. Next, we have our codecs. So a lot of choices and a lot of flavors of each of these codecs. So we have some H.265 codecs, we have some H.264 codecs, as well as some ProRes codecs. So ProRes HQ, ProRes 422, ProRes LT, a lot of flexibility here. And then lastly, we have the bit rate. So we can select how much data we want to be recorded per second. So we can go as low as 50 megabits per second up to 720 megabits per second. Now, while in this menu, you can press onto the Q button to get a little bit more information on each of the codecs and what they do. So definitely a nice touch to get a little bit more of an understanding onto making the right choice in terms of codec. Next is our color output selection to the card or HDMI. So we can choose whether we want film simulation to be recorded on the memory card and HDMI. We can choose F-Log, F-Log2, or HLG. We're going to leave it to film simulation. And then next, if we have ProRes enabled, we can choose if we want to record proxy files as well, so we can turn it on or off. And then lastly, we have our RAW option. So we can click and then we can enable whether we want to record Blackmagic RAW or ProRes RAW to an external recorder. We can choose the resolution as well as the frame rate. Now the FUJIFILM X-H2S features a lot of shortcut keys, and that can really help you and speed up your workflow. So we're going to go through them. So first, we can format the card by simply pressing onto the drive button as well as the down button simultaneously. And then we can see slot 1, I can go in and then format it. Now, if you want to edit your quick menu, you simply have to long press the Q button and it'll pop up, and then you can go around and then you can select between 4 pages of various options. So I can go and change it to subject detection setting, for example. Now it's set, I can press back and then that will save my quick menu. Now, if we want to quickly transfer images from our camera to our phone, we can do so by simply going into the playback mode and then pressing the ISO button. And then we can select one image or more than one image. So let's say I'm selecting this one and then this one. And then once I'm done, I simply have to press on back and then I can start transfer. And you can see on my phone, I can join in and connect. And then my images are transferred to the phone. Now, if you want to protect images on your memory card from being erased, you can do that very quickly. So into the playback mode, you simply have to press the FN1 button. So this is this one right here. So if I click on it, I have locked it. You can see the little key symbol, and I can do so again, press on function 1, and then it's protected. So if I wanted to try and delete it, I can't. So very handy if you have one image that you really don't want to delete. Now you can quickly record voice memo to your images. So long press the AF on button. I am recording a voice memo on this image. And now you can see I've pressed the AF on button to hear it. I am recording a voice memo on this image. Now to be able to do that, you need to have the voice memo option enabled. So if it wasn't, you simply have to press onto menu OK and then go down and make sure that voice memo setting is set to on. So I hope you enjoyed this quick video about the various features of the Fujifilm X-H2S. Now, if you'd like to see more content like this on this and other Fujifilm products, don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel. Now, until next time, c'était Francis pour les Fuji Guys.